indication from our secretary, Ms. Chabo, Dr. Chabo, if we can continue, if you can start. Mr. Mjapelo, can we continue?
Yeah, I believe we can continue, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be your program director for this workshop. My name is Malevana Sel. Liasa Limpopo branch prides itself with the support it gets from Liasa members in the province, sister branches in other provinces, Liasa supporters and lovers who always respond to the call whenever we call. The EXCO said and saw it fit that we must be unapologetic in contributing to the ally sector in the province and countrywide by having workshops that tackle our day-to-day struggles in the profession. We are here today gathered under the theme of library advocacy towards sustainable and favorable public library space. We will continue to call for capacity on LIS professionals, and we will contribute by ensuring that our workshops continues on a regular basis. Ladies and gentlemen, you are mostly welcome to the workshop hosted by Liasa Limpopo branch. Please be free and take notes. For matters needing clarity, we will get to them on deliberations. I therefore officially declare this workshop open. Let us take as much as we can from it to better position ourselves in terms of advocacy in LIS sectors. So in terms of our programs, the opening and welcome is done. We are going now to have a purpose of the workshop and introduction of guest speaker that will be done by Mr. Mjapelo. And then our guest speaker will present for us. Then we will have deliberations led by me, our program director. Then we will have announcement by our Deputy Secretary, Ms. Tetla Jemina. Then we'll have a closure by the program director. Without further wasting time, Mr. Lisiba Mjapelo will take us through the purpose of workshop and introduction of our guest speaker. Mr. Mjapelo.
Thank you so much, Program Director, our very own PRO. Let me take this time and greet everybody who managed to join this workshop. We really appreciate the time you took from your busy schedules. So my duty here is not that long. I'm going to take you through the purpose of this workshop. So the purpose of this workshop is to capacitate our fellow librarians with the importance of the library advocacy in their respective workplace, and also to introduce our keynote speaker. So our keynote speaker is in possession of a degree in media studies, honors in media studies, and also a higher diploma in information science. He started working as a publication assistant at the University of Limpopo under the Marketing and Communication Directorate. He then moved to join the Limpopo Department of Sports, Arts and Culture as a district librarian for Vembe District. He later on moved to head office where he was working as a librarian responsible for skills and capacity development for the very same department. He is now working as a project coordinator, marketing and advocacy at the National Library of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put together for Mr. Ntecheng Mogale. Mr. Mogale, you are welcome in this workshop. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm just trying to share my screen. Is it visible, Chair?
Yes, it is very much visible. Thank you, Mr. Mwale.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. Colleagues, good day, good morning. As they already introduced me, my name is Ntechem Mogale. I'm also a librarian, a qualified librarian. And it is a great honor and privilege to be part of this session today, and more because this is for Liasa Limpopo branch, my province of birth. So yeah, without wasting time, I'll run into it. Colleagues, it is times are tough. It has never been more important and more desperate for us to start advocating for library information services in the country. The economy is melting. We are in a sector that is an unfunded mandate in most of our municipalities. And we know that we are a non-profiting generating sector. So advocacy becomes even more critical and essential to our sector today than ever before. I'm going to start with a brief history of advocacy, library advocacy in our country, in our sector. Those who were there, Mr. Malvana will remember very well that we did try to have advocacy before, advocacy work groups that were done through Mzansi Libraries Online, which was the project of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The project was run through the National Library of South Africa. Mr. Malvana and I, we were part of the project, and that's when I started to take interest in advocacy, and hence we are here today. The National Library of South Africa did try. We tried in the year 2016 to establish advocacy work groups in the 9 provinces. The aim of these advocacy work groups was to create a platform for library information services sector to collect impact stories and conduct coordinated events and activities to influence a favorable policy change and transformation for library services in South Africa. However, the advocacy work groups, they fell off as the MLO project ceased. But then we are aware that our one and only association, Liasa, do have advocacy program. But as you know, that advocacy, it's an expensive activity. It needs funding and it needs a centralized coordination. So the National Library of South Africa, in our effort to ensure improved cooperation and collaboration, we are back. We found it fit that we need to make an input and actively coordinate advocacy, library advocacy in South Africa. We are going around the provinces now, having sessions with colleagues in the sector, nominating advocacy work group members. We've done it in the Northwest Province already for this financial year. And somebody asked, why the National Library of South Africa? And the answer is that, colleagues, the National Library of South Africa, it's clear that the NLSA is in a good position to coordinate advocacy in the country, as we are a representative of public library services, even in AFLIA and IFLA. Therefore, it is important that the National Library plays a leading role in terms of library advocacy. Also, the project will require proper and structured funding. Therefore, when the National Library comes to the ground, it brings resources and good platforms for advocacy to be able to kick off and ensure that we go out there, collect stories, and show the world and show the country and also stakeholders our role in terms of socio-economic development and our contribution to sustainable development goals. But somebody is asking themselves now, what is advocacy? Colleagues, with the little knowledge we have, advocacy refers to coordinated actions taken to influence decision-making at a district, regional, provincial, national, and international level. Some of these activities include public demonstrations, protests. If there is a decision in the sector that we are not happy with, we can have an educated protest, not burning of the roads, not burning of the tires, but your librarian kind of a protest where we go and we submit memorandums to say we are concerned about this and that. Letter writing, lobbying, legal action, messaging, and organized set of communication tactics. These are some of the activities that we use to advocate as tools in our sector. Therefore, how do we advocate? Somebody may ask, how do you advocate at a district level or at a regional level? Advocacy varies, colleagues. It varies from different levels. At the provincial level, we can advocate for policy change. For an example, there is one example that is favorable to me. We do know, colleagues, those who are in public library services, that our SCM policies are not aligned with our collection development policies. I'll give a typical example on that to say that we built our collection development on needs assessment. You collect your needs as a librarian. For an example, librarian in Fetahomu, the library is next to an FET. It is clear that the collection of that library will reflect more of an academic nature. But unfortunately, when it's time to build that collection, you'll find that a department appoints service providers who bring to you what they have, and you have to choose what they bring to you. They just call you to a book fair, you go, you choose books. But the books that are available on the day are not responding directly to your collection needs. Hence, there is a need to advocate at a provincial and national level, looking at that problem to say, how can we influence policy change? How can we talk to the powers that be to say, can we be exempted? Some people were talking in our platforms in the alumni to say, maybe library services is in the wrong sphere of government. So these are the kind of issues that we advocate for at district and national level. You can also advocate at your municipal level. You can advocate and lobby with your local councillors to say to your MM, we know that a library is a competency of the province. We know that a library on your side is regarded as an unfunded mandate. However, the needs of our people call for you to come and put something on the table so that we can build new libraries. We can equip our libraries with more modern resources. Therefore, you can also advocate at that level. But the aim is to create a favorable environment and also secure the future for library services. We are faced with a serious problem as a country, colleague. Those who are at province, Mr. Malebana, they will know that provincial library services is not properly funded. We are funded through what we call library conditional grant. This is a conditional funding. It can go anytime. Library services in all the 9 provinces is not properly budgeted through equitable share, which is a problem, colleagues. It says to us that library services to our leaders, it's an afterthought. They don't see it in the same light as they see it, as they see policing, as they see health. So it is up to us, colleagues, to start working together, have those committees, collect impact stories, and go to the powers that be, go to the people who influence the decision makers and say, listen, when you have libraries, our kids get access to academic material, our kids get access to information resources which enable them to pass matric. Through our libraries, learners can be able to apply for tertiary education, apply for tertiary funding. For an example, we were in the Free State, and then the directorate went straight to the premier and said, listen, we are performing well in terms of matric, because this is one province that has been investing heavily on library services, even going as far as being one of the provinces that employed librarians on permanent basis. on a large scale. Therefore, it is important, colleagues, that we find ourselves in a position where we collect stories and we have events where we promote and lobby for the role of library and information services in terms of socio-economic development in our country. We need to be able to get those learners who are coming to the libraries and record them as they speak about how they benefited the library, how the library enabled them in terms of career development. We have local business people who come into our libraries to source information. We need to start talking to those people so that they give us impact evidence for us to go and show and influence decision makers to say, look, we have a huge role to play in terms of the national development plan. Therefore, funding must be prioritized for library and information services. I always give a typical example to Mr. Malebana that during COVID, government sat down and they had priority services. And then when it comes to library and information services, they were on the fence. And people kept on speaking to say, look, if matric students are still going to school and they need to study and sit for matric, then you need to open libraries. I think that's when it was tested, colleagues, to say, where are we as a sector in the country? Where are we regarded and what are we doing to fight for our position in terms of these services? Because if you observe, colleagues, the budget cuts, we don't have equitable share. We have conditional grant, and now they are cutting conditional grant. When conditional grant finishes, what is going to happen? We have provinces, colleagues, that they don't even have budget anymore. The little budget that they receive, it goes to COE. And then there is no budget for special programs. Provinces don't have budget to build collections. And the threat is that in the near future, those libraries may just become book storages. We even have provinces which are unable to source internet services for their libraries due to SCM policies. And that's when we need to advocate, colleagues, starting at a province and have provincial representative being part of the National Advocacy Working Committee so that we can address these problems at provincial level and both at national level. We have NTLIS, colleagues, that is advising the minister directly. Every time when the minister is going to sit, he talks to NTLIS. NTLIS advises the minister. For an example, recently we had an issue of unqualified librarians in the Northern Cape making copies of books and therefore infringing in terms of copyright. And the very same NTLIS went to the minister and said, listen, we must make it compulsory for all librarians to get training on copyright. And this training is coming. So it shows us that we have a channel which we can use to advocate and try to show these people, go to the communities and influence them to say, look, ask for more libraries. When municipalities going to budget sessions, they need to go and prioritize libraries. We need to have a voice, colleagues. Hence we are here, we need to advocate. There is space, and then there is also challenges. Information is becoming readily accessible. The public can read books online, soft copies. So it is important for us as a sector to ensure that we assert our place and continue to lobby. But what are the challenges? Why do we need to lobby in South Africa? As I have already mentioned, colleagues, that poor and inadequate funding, this is a big problem. We need proper funding for LIS in the country. Poor infrastructure. Most of our libraries, they are in shambles. There is no efficient maintenance. Libraries are not being maintained. New libraries are not being built. Where I come from, Radikali, you've got about 8 villages, but there is no a single library. So this is a problem. We have a very, very, very serious backlog. And also to advocate to deal with the question of a poor reading culture. When the president of the country, colleagues, alluded that an average grade R learner cannot read to understand. They cannot read with meaning. This problem fell squarely on library and information services sector, colleagues. It said to us that we need to go and relook at our services. We need to go and relook at our kids' corner. we need to go and look at our reading programs and outreach activities. What are we doing to address this? What we are offering in the library, is it enough? Is it responding to this? Because if we are seen to be addressing this problem, and if we do our best to address this problem, then these government leaders will start to see libraries for what they are. We will be seen as agents of change. Therefore, when it comes to resource allocation, we will be a priority. Unqualified staff. I don't even need to mention this one, colleagues. It's a problem everywhere. People mushroom. People have taken our sector for granted. Time and time and again, we have to deal with an unqualified librarian there and there. We have all seen, colleagues, that library assistant posts are posts for everyone with a qualification. But if you go to other sectors, assistant posts are used to give experience to the very same graduates in the sector. But in our sector, this is not the same. This problem needs to be addressed, but it's a problem that we address and advocate at national level. And lack of political will for library development. We've always been disappointed, colleagues. Political principals representing our fields time and time and again, they'll come in the field and talk about other services and not even mention library services. This is not because they are ignorant. It's because they don't know much about library information services. We are not making enough noise. We are not fighting for our place on the table. So we need to go and lobby. We need to go and make noise. We need to go and have coordinated events where we bring these people under one roof and we propagate and we assert the value of library and information services in terms of community development and limited access to policymakers. Ever since the formation of conditional grant framework, colleagues, there has never been policymakers actively working to develop policies that will help us govern and regulate library and information services. Most of the time we are caught wanting. We need to start working in a coordinated effort so that whenever there is a problem in the country that is a challenge to us, we can be able to access these lawmakers. We see laws and policies are being renewed, reviewed time and time again, but nothing in the library and information services is moving. Therefore, there is a need for us to start looking around, try to gain access to policymakers so that we can change these issues that are affecting us at the moment. When we travel around the country, colleagues, you will find that people confuse advocacy and marketing. But then at least we have an opportunity to clear it today, colleagues, to say, look, marketing is a part of advocacy. That's the baseline. In advocacy, some of the activities we do, we have techniques and tools that are part of marketing that we use, and we know that in a long run, they form part of marketing. For an example, marketing is a process of planning and executing a conception, pricing, promotion, and services to create exchanges that satisfy an individual or organizational goal. Therefore, here this is your standard marketing, and it has got its main purposes. For an example, sometimes it is just there intentionally created and coordinated to inform, persuade, or remind a selected audience about a product offering. When on the other side, as I mentioned, advocacy, it's all about influencing decision makers for policy change. While this one, it's all about taking a service to the people. For an example, in a library, we can market a library. We can have a marketing campaign to go and promote a new services in the library. For an example, if the province has acquired a new good internet service, or we have acquired databases or e-resources, something of that nature, we can sit down and come with marketing strategy to go and promote these services to our community, to say, look, come to Sonavarana Library, we now have internet, or we now have a new good collection. While on the other side, advocacy, it goes longer than that. The latent effect of marketing touches more on advocacy. Therefore, there is a difference in terms of that. But what are the benefits of effective advocacy? Colleagues, if we start working together, we start collecting impact stories, we start to approach lawmakers, we start to talk to our local councillors, we bring those school principals, and we bring the tribal authorities and influence them so that they start to speak more about library services. When our local councillors go to sit in the budgeting committees and they keep on mentioning library services, we therefore going to have increased public awareness. We will also have increased support for grassroots advocacy and marketing, because the moment we establish this relationship, when we have these district committees going to engage our local councillors, our local leaders, and also engaging our provincial leaders at all levels, we will have improved support for grassroots advocacy. We will have more friends of the library. And also, effective advocacy, it will enable favorable local and national legislation favorable to libraries and expand access to information. When there is more budget, colleagues, when library services has become a priority to our government leaders, there will be more access, there will be more libraries built, and then there will be expanded access to information services. And also there will be improved service across the country, and also, more importantly, we will have enhanced stakeholder relations and collaboration. Every library must have a proper stakeholder relationship. You need stakeholders. We are a service that depend more on stakeholders. We need stakeholders to come in and support us, to speak for us, to put a word for us, in terms of getting a favor and also proper funding. But what are the most challenges now currently? Visibility and awareness. It's embarrassing sometimes, colleagues, when you visit our libraries, sometimes you travel to a community and you ask people around, where is library X? And they don't know. This shows that there is a problem. We have colleagues who are seated in libraries. The problem could either be lack of knowledge, lack of skills, or lack of capacity. But we have a general problem of visibility and awareness. People are not aware. There are some people who are not even aware that there is a qualification for library and information services. You sit with people and they tell you that I didn't know that one has to go to school in order to be a librarian. This shows that there is a serious problem of lack of awareness in terms of library and information services, knowing who you are and what you provide. Librarians need to develop an identity for their library. It must be known. What is this library? What is it about? The community must know, why do we have this library? Because every community, when they strike, they will march, burn the tires, they will pass the tavern. Some communities, they will burn the school, some will pass the school, and they will go and burn a library. We might criticize them and think, oh, they lack education. Or no. To an extent, we need to go to the communities and emphasize the role that the library plays in community development. That way, we will have people protecting libraries. We will have people banning taverns, asking for libraries, instead of passing taverns, going to ban libraries. So there is a need to advocate, colleagues. Again, on sustainability. Library services is not sustainable in the country, colleagues. We are an expenditure to government. We are an expend. Unlike the traffic department, which they allocate a particular chunk of money, Tina, they allocate, we don't generate. Every year we are taking, it's not sustainable. In terms of disasters, we are the first victim on the scoreboard. They will come to library services and take money to go and address disaster challenges, but they will not go to health. They will not go to safety and security, because we are not sustainable. So there is a need to advocate and create a good climate for library and information service in the country. So to touch more on advocacy and sustainability, According to the United Nations, advocacy is crucial to LIS sustainability. It is essential that public libraries and library staff are able to continue to improve the lives of people they serve by providing services to meet individual and community needs. Librarians need to evolve. We need to find our identity. We need to assert ourselves. We need to go to the funerals. There must be an announcement in the funeral, colleagues. Mr. Malibana, about the librarians, Mr. Malibana wants to talk. I am please come to the library. We have internet there. For those who want to do SARS e-filing, come to the library. If you want to check anything online, come to the library. We need to continue to assess the need of our people and also come with innovative ways and services to meet those evolving needs. People have access to online books now. People have access to the internet. Our kids have got access to tablets these days. What is it that we are offering so that parents can take their kids from school and send them to the library in the afternoon? What are we doing? In this ever-changing environment, fourth industrial revolution, where there is almost improved universal access to information, what are we doing as a sector to ensure that we continue to hold our place? Because these days, schools have got laboratories. Schools have got books. What are we doing? There is a question. We need to start sitting down, colleagues, and reassess ourselves, realign, and come with those innovative ways where we go and we convince the people and we show the communities and the society at large that we remain an essential part of growth in our country. The statement says, when government decision makers understand the impact that libraries have on people's lives, libraries will receive the support they need in terms of favorable policy change and funding. The statement is undisputed, colleagues. Because if politicians come to the ground and people tell them that they want libraries, I'm sure in most communities we come from, we've never had people protesting that they want a library. That's why politicians are not prioritizing library services. But they are prioritizing 350 because people were talking about it to say, we want that 350, it must be maintained, it must be sustained. And government sat down and said, listen, people need their 350, we must continue with this grant because it is important. But who is speaking for library services? There is a need for us to start raising our voice, colleagues. But then to the question of the public library space in the development agenda, there is a statement also to say public libraries have a potential to serve and engage the entire community through targeted outreach programs aimed at improving lives of information-deprived communities who currently lack inadequate access to information needed to live healthy and productive lives. For an example, Funda Mzansi, colleagues, in South Africa. We have a Funda Mzansi Championship, which is a flagship of all public libraries in the country. When you look at that project, it's a baby of LIS in South Africa. Whenever any person thinks about spelling bee, impromptu reading, book review, they talk about library and information services. We have a duty there and a responsibility, and we are doing well. We need to look at programs like that to say, how can we fight for our place in the development agenda? What are we contributing in terms of education? What are we contributing in terms of agriculture in the country? Because in terms of a standard development goal, we need to ensure that we help government eradicate poverty. We need to contribute to leisure and socialization. We still need to go to say to people, look, you have your phone, you still have to buy data, but when you come to our library, everything is free and you can be assistant whenever you need to. Hence, we need to start advocating. We need to start working together, colleagues, and ensure that we raise a voice, we create awareness, and we influence people out there. Somebody is asking them, what do we do? What are you asking, Mohali? Why advocate? What is it that we are supposed to do? And it brings us to planning and plotting your advocacy action plan. I've made a summary on this, Chair, in the interest of time. Just to give colleagues an idea that when you conduct a successful advocacy, it begins with an advocacy goal and an advocacy action plan to help you reach your library advocacy goal. Therefore, this is a formal process. It needs meetings. It needs scribers. You need to develop, there must be documentation that is developed. There must be policies that will govern processes and procedures. And these plans, they work over time. Advocacy is not an overnight thing, colleagues. When we advocate for a particular problem, it might take us 5 years, it might take us 2 years. Each problem has its own challenges, and they vary in terms of time, resources, and the people you need to reach in order to advocate and reach your advocacy goal. But then you start with the need. What are some of the needs in the community? Internet, for an example, e-resources, poor irrelevant collection, poor recruitment, and executive support. Sometimes in a library, you can see that, hey, there is no way province is going to assist us with internet, but what can we do? We can try and go and lobby to the municipality to say, look, the library is situated within your office complex, and all your services there, they are connected to the internet, but the library doesn't have the internet. We do have municipalities in Limpopo, because we are talking about Limpopo today, which like Abutulamela municipality, which are very dedicated to library and information services. Whenever there is a need to lobby there, they respond. We need to have a problem first. Before we can advocate, colleagues, we must have a problem. That is the need, something we need to address. Poor recruitment. We can advocate to province to say, look, we have an issue of understaffed libraries. What can you do? But you don't just go there and protest and say, hire people. We have to go and collect evidence that shows them that, look, if we hire people, then we will have increased input, we'll have efficient service in end user service in our libraries, and therefore our people will benefit in 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we need to advocate for that. And then the question we will need to ask ourselves is that what is preventing the library from providing those services? How can the problem be solved? How can we remove the barrier? So the province is not able to bring internet to the library because government policies says all the ICT requirement must be directed to SETA. But at the same time, SETA is not able to come to all days library and assist us in getting internet there. Therefore, the Library and Information Services Advocacy Working Group for Limpopo can be able to speak to influential people and come with a coordinated effort to address province to say, look, grant us an exception. Allow provincial library services to go and tender and got an internet service provider for our public libraries, because as it stands, we are not able to provide to our people. When more councillors are asking about problems, when more schools principals and more tribal authorities are engaging province about that problem, it will be solved. They will provide exemption. Because we have a challenge, colleagues, now that we have provinces like Eastern Cape, Western Cape. These provinces are more developed in terms of library and information services. I know some of them, it's because they are within metros, but then again, nothing is impossible in this country. These provinces have exemption. They provide the best internet services for their people. They've got the best collection. They recruit the best staff. There is no nepotism there, manga. They recruit the best, and as a result, the people in those provinces, they receive the best library information services that contribute positively in their lives. And the saddest part, colleagues, is that the people working in those provinces are people from Limpopo. I will put it on the table. The people who are delivering those excellent services are people who are from our province. But what about our province? We are behind in terms of matric. We are one of the lowest scoring provinces. Why that? Why us? Because we are not receiving these services, colleagues. Therefore, there needs to be a solution. A barrier must be removed. Your advocacy goal, what do you want to achieve? Your goal can be broken down into objectives that you will reach, objectives that you work on, you time them in a project management manner, time them in a way that when you achieve them, they help you reach your entire advocacy goal. But here we are, we're setting advocacy objectives and monitor progress. Your objectives, as I mentioned, colleagues, they help you to break down your advocacy goals in more manageable achievement. Here, there is an example to say, if you are preparing a meal for your friends and family, you'll want to focus on individual dishes. You'll cook umasonja, stew, mashed potatoes, pap, rice, but at the end of the day, the goal is to serve dinner. So the very same principle works also in advocacy. We break our goal into simpler and manageable objectives so that we can be able to achieve the overall goal. So a good objective will be quantified, tied to specific numbers. In advocacy, colleagues, there are issues that will take longer time, 5 years, 10 years, for an example. If you want province to amend SCM policies to accommodate library services, this is not something you can achieve in 2 to 3 years. Surely, if we start to work there, it's a problem that we might achieve after 5 to 10 years. But then there are problems that we can achieve within a year or 2 years, like the question of recruitment. We can push and advocate and lobby with province and national and DPSA to say no more unqualified librarians in the sector. Yes, we know the issue of council and stuff. We'll deal with them the other day. But then the point to emphasize is that our advocacy objectives must be manageable. They must be qualified, where you describe the kind of change you want to see, and they should have time frames. These are the guidelines that we use when we develop an advocacy goal and objectives. Here is a typical example. If your goal was that by June next year, the local government or municipality must increase public libraries' annual budget by 2%. Your objective may be that by January next year, the city council must propose a new resolution that positions public internet access as a core library services and recommend an annual budget increase. Already you know your stakeholders, the municipal managers. And then who does the municipal manager listen to? They listen to their political representatives on the ground. Therefore, we can break down our objectives, draft our tactics, and also create timelines so that we can be able to monitor progress and also to ensure that if ever we are having odds, if ever we are having challenges, we can realign and also implement contingency plans. And then one of the most important guidelines in terms of library advocacy is stakeholder mapping. We need to know who are our stakeholders. An essential component of public library advocacy is knowing who the decision makers are, who can help us reach our advocacy goal. I've given an example here for municipal managers, ward councillors, tribal authorities, friends of the library, Abunali Bali, and Room to Read. We also have school principal, SGB, and ENTLIS. These are friends of the library, colleagues. If you're a librarian here and you don't have your proper stakeholder mapping, when you leave this workshop, you must go down and sit and draft your stakeholder mapping. Who are the friends of the libraries? Who are the people who can influence the decision makers in terms of favorable change that favors your library? You need to know those people at the top of your head and draft them in terms of stakeholder mapping. However, target groups vary according to different advocacy goals and objectives. The problem or the advocacy goal we are dealing with, it will determine the kind of stakeholders you need to involve. And also, colleagues, we need to mind that stakeholders have got different roles to play. in terms of your advocacy goal and objectives. Some stakeholders will just inform, some will influence, while others will at most take decisions. For example, municipal managers. If you are able to reach your municipal managers and you convince them about this service, they will be able to make decisions and influence council, and as a result, you will achieve your advocacy objectives. Each library colleagues must have an advocacy message. An effective advocacy message provides people with a clear understanding of why and how they should help. You must be like Wishbone Molele. Wherever you go, you talk about challenges in your library, and you also highlight the goals and the milestones that you are achieving as a library. When you go to community meetings, you must post about how your library is assisting local kids and local matriculants access information resources and also apply for tertiary education. You must also have those impact stories. You must irritate people. At Lebogomo, Mr. Molele, wherever he goes, every supermarket, he talks about his library. And you must create a library story. Every time there is an opportunity to talk about a library, you must be ready. It is important to be always ready to tell a short and compelling story. There must be a moving story about your library. For an example, I found a student, a TUT student, talking about a library from Limpopo. The lady, she mentioned that I am here because of this library. Then I texted the librarian and said, listen, I'm hearing a good story about you. Keep the good work. This is one of the important elements and component of a good advocacy strategy. Building an advocacy team. Colleagues, when it comes to advocacy, everyone is part of the team. Even if you are just a staff member at your library, you are part of the team. It is important that we start this advocacy from district level, Mr. Malebana. Before it can even go to provinces, librarians under Capricorn District, Sikukuni District, Waterberg District, they need to start forming their own local advocacy work groups. They need to approach local businesses. For an example, of Mr. Kola in Sikukuni, they used to meet together to go and approach mines, for mines to donate books, donate computers. It's a team effort. You can't do it alone. But we will be coming to nominate and establish a provincial advocacy working groups as the National Library. I hope that we will get the right people and we will get the ball running, and then we will start to work. I will show people, colleagues, a typical structure of an advocacy work group. This is how it is structured, colleagues. It starts at grassroots, at library level. At the district, you will have our Smalanyana advocacy work group there. And then we will nominate people from library level to form part of district advocacy work groups. These are the people who will assist in approaching local councillors, approaching municipal leaders, tribal authorities. These colleagues will work together in organizing events, outreach programs that will just be aimed at promoting the value, not marketing, but promoting and creating awareness on the role of library and information services in socio-economic development. Therefore, from the district, there will be nominations to form provincial advocacy work groups. At the provincial advocacy work groups, we've got district representatives who will be working together, attending meetings, brainstorming, working on projects that will help in advocating and creating awareness for library and information services in the province. Because we know it is a problem. Provinces don't budget for library and information services. Most of them, some of them, they are pushed, some are only trying. I'm very happy, and I must state it here, that we have observed that Limpopo has now started to allocate a budget for library services. I saw from 10 million to 50 million, and we must give a standing or a standing ovation to Africa's Eden that this has been taken into consideration and progress has been made. Therefore, at a provincial level, we need to have colleagues advocating. We had an issue of post people not being retained and stuff. These issues, colleagues, they need a proper and coordinated advocacy plan. We need to start advocating, even going forward, to say it must never ever happen again, that we have troubled recruitment, budget allocation, resources, construction of libraries. We are one of the provinces that has got the highest backlog in terms of new libraries, in terms of maintenance. But then now, if you check, we are hardly opening new libraries, which is a problem that when we come there and we establish an advocacy work group, it must be first on the list to say, listen, in terms of construction of new libraries, we have a problem there and it needs to be addressed. And then on National Advocacy and Marketing Coordinating Committee, here, all the 9 provinces will have representatives to come and form the National Advocacy Work Group. These are the people who collect data from provinces, and then we will also have national events that are aimed at advocating and creating awareness for library and information services at a national scale. They will rotate across the provinces. The chairperson will come from the National Library of South Africa, and then the secretariat and everyone else will be coming from the province. The good thing with this advocacy program now is that it is funded through library conditional grant. Therefore, in terms of events, there will be funds for events. In terms of meetings, venues, there will be funds for that. Therefore, it's time to start working, colleagues. What are the terms of reference? I've also summarized the common terms of reference for advocacy work groups. There will be a local elected chair or head to facilitate the establishment of the advocacy marketing work groups. Members of the groups mostly do not exceed 12, but because provinces are not the same in terms of size, population, we've got provinces like Gauteng that have got different corridors, Gauteng North, Gauteng South, meaning that the advocacy work groups for Gauteng may not be the same as advocacy work groups from Mpumalanga and Limpopo. So these terms of reference may vary, colleagues. They are not a one-hand-fit-all. The work group will have a scriber that takes notes during meetings and will keep records. And then in terms of membership for the advocacy work groups, it's not a baby of the province. Everybody, even from municipal libraries, community stakeholders, everybody is part of an advocacy work group. In the work group, there are those who are having position, and there are members who are part of the advocacy work group. Therefore, members will develop and should develop and have a demonstrated commitment to public libraries. For friends of the libraries, I always say to my colleagues that you always have this person who complains when the library is not closed, is not opened. And I said to them, this person is not an enemy, he's a good friend of the library. We need such people when we start to establish our advocacy work groups, the committee and the work groups, because these are the people who have passion for the library and for the sector. We regard them as friends of the libraries. What are the expectations for advocacy work groups? You participate in meetings, you participate in advocacy-related activities. For an example, if it's during Youth Month, June, an advocacy work group in Limpopo will sit down and say, how can we assert the role of LIS in terms of youth in the country? Then we'll come out with activities that will go to the public and say, look, we will also contribute to youth. We have a history in terms of democracy in our country. This we can do. For an example, recently we've been celebrating the Charlotte Maxeke here at the National Library. The aim of that project, it was not to market or anything, National Library or anything, but it was to show South Africa to say, look, as library services, we also commemorate women, we recognize that women need to be empowered. Therefore, in a way, the people in this country, they know that the library and information services sector recognizes women, and in a way, we will have favor out of them. And also, the opportunities to participate may vary to include project planning, reviewing of advocacy plans and materials, and making presentation at stakeholder meetings and attending library events. So these are some of the roles and expectations that members of the advocacy committee, provincial advocacy working committee, will be expected to partake. What are the operations? There will be monthly calls to discuss plans and provide status update on activities. This says to us that, colleagues, when we come and we send a formal invitation to come and nominate and establish the provincial advocacy work group, we must not just nominate people we like or people that we favor. We must nominate workhorses. We need people who are obsessed about library and information service. We need people who will work an extra length to ensure that there is progress on implementation, and there is also ensure that they dedicate also in terms of resources, because I must say that the budget for library advocacy it's kind of limited because it's a new phenomenon in the sector. NACO, the National Library, they started to formalize it here. Hence, you have me here. They've decided that, look, there is a serious need to advocacy in the country. IFLA has also made a statement to say, look, there is a feeling that, and a feeling and an observation that South Africa, we are not advocating enough. We are not collecting impact stories. There is no centralized platform where anyone around the world can be able to see the impact that library and information services play in our country, and also in our contributing to our national development plan. Even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they came here. They gave us huge donations. There was Mzansi Libraries online project, but to this day, they are not able to have a platform where they can be able to assess the impact that project had in our society. Therefore, it will be a challenge for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to come back and say, here are more resources. Let's continue with the legacy, because we do not have a proper and coordinated library and information services advocacy. I also want to share a portal through you, Chair, to say that when we collect stories, colleagues, Chair, I don't know if you can see my other screen here. I've minimized this one.
We are still seeing your presentation, not the other one.
Yes, so as I was saying, colleagues, all right, here we are. Is it visible, Chair?
Yes, now it's visible. The one with
Yes.
the map. Yes.
Yes. When we advocate, colleagues, somebody will ask themselves, where are we going to deposit our impact stories? Where are we going to collect impact statistics and deposit them for anyone to be able to access them? We have SA Libraries portal. For those who don't know, this portal, it's one of our main advocacy tool in the country. We update it. As the project coordinator, I'm also responsible for this portal. So anyone around the world who wants to understand library information services in the country, they are going to come to this portal. For an example, if it's Limpopo, they will click here. They will have all the addresses of all the libraries. This is a project that is being developed It's an advocacy tool for South Africa. This information that you see here, it's the information that I'm also responsible to ensuring that it goes to the IFLA map of the world. As the National Library, we are also in charge of updating the IFLA map of the world for South Africa. So these are the advocacy tools that are readily available for us as colleagues in the LIS sector. When we have impact stories colleagues from the provinces, we go here, there'll be galleries where there'll be impact stories. Under Limpopo, it's Mr. Malabana will submit and then we will update. We will deposit impact stories here. So whenever there is an opportunity to speak about library service, you can simply go to SA Libraries and this information will be there for you at first hand. We'll also have e-resources. We want to be able to promote access and allow our people to access e-resources, which will be subscription-based and tied to a particular library. So a user or a patron will come to the library, they get a subscription, a timed subscription to access e-resources. There's also a directory in this map. This map, usually it puts the pins here. If you are traveling to any province and you want to know which one is your nearest library, you can use this portal. This is our tool, colleagues. Please adopt it. As you also can see in the numbers, colleagues, it's very sad. You see, like Limpopo, it says 97. This is a problem, colleagues, especially because we are not doing well in terms of metric. It's a thorn, and we have the fewest libraries. This is something that must really make us angry and irritate us, and then we must start to advocate and start to speak to the powers that be to say, look, you need to prioritize library and information services in the country. Thank you very much. Mr. Malebane. I've swapped the screen, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwale, for a very wonderful presentation. It was indeed an eye-opener. And I believe colleagues have picked most of the key pointers that we have shared with us today in this platform. So from the presentation, we've heard that the libraries are unfunded mandate in most municipalities, but I believe through advocacy, together we can change this by advocating for our libraries. Are you still presenting, Mr. Mal, or you are fine?
No, I'm fine. I'm trying to stop sharing.
Oh, okay, that's fine then. I will just continue with the deliberation as you are trying to sort out the stop sharing. So from what we heard from the advocacy is the issue of policy change that need to be advocated for, that we can get the policy change through advocacy and the transformation of LIS sector. So it seems that advocacy is one of the key pointers that we need in our day-to-day activities. Advocacy work groups for sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals continue to find expressions in our workshops. We saw it last time while Dr. Mujapil was in the podium. Then it is therefore important for us to know them and align ourselves with, with them in our day-to-day activities so that we are proper positioned. Hopefully from here, we are all going to influence change in our respective environments. More work is clearly still to be done. Poor reading culture, poor inadequate funding, these issues need ourselves to come together and advocate for change. We saw the link between marketing and advocacy and how they relate to each other. We also noted the benefits of advocacy in library services, such as improved support in libraries, increased public awareness, enhanced stakeholder relation and collaborations. We also noted the challenges in our libraries that include and not limited to visibility and awareness. What services do you provide in the library? Colleagues in the LIS sector, these issues need immediate resolution and intervention from ourselves so that we are visible and people know what we offer. In the previous years, in there are people who normally do surprise visit, or they normally ask people in the communities if they know the services that they offer. So one time we heard that in another certain area, the library was not known in a certain community. And it was that community, it is just nearer with the TVET. But the TVET students were not knowing that they have a library in their environment. So it is this issue of saying we are not visible and people do not know the service we provide. So that is why we need an immediate resolution in intervention so that we are known and visible to the public at large, not only to the communities, but also to the stakeholders that are nearby, the schools, the TVET, the clinics, so that we are all known and better positioned with our councillors there, Mishate, as Mr. Mrali indicated. So we take also in the presentation the advocacy action plan, that we need a library advocacy goal per individual library, that each library needs to have its own library advocacy goals. The advocacy objectives, stakeholders mapping, who will assist with what. Those are the things that we need to take into cognizance. And we also need to build your advocacy teams. As Mr. Mrali indicated, that for us to move forward, we need to build the advocacy teams. And the portal was shared to say we must give input and deposit our impact stories so that our advocacy stories can be in that advocacy tools and we are better positioned. And the portal is salibraries.ac.za. But without further ado, colleagues, I will open the platform and I will take a first round of clarity-seeking questions from the floor. I will take 5, then we'll ask, then our facilitator will respond, then we'll take the last one. I will be here on the floor taking note, taking hand and noting hand. If there are any question, clarity-seeking and inputs, let them be. I will take hands, colleagues, as you raise them. As we are still waiting for the question, Mr. Mral, I see here in the text box, we are having, I think, there is this one from Stephen to say public librarians in the district or municipalities should be empowered or capacitated to make collection development to the particular library that one serves. User survey needs are best known by local librarians of that particular library, rather than blanketing the needs of one library to the other. Okay, it's not a question. Then it was an input. We have a message from our doctor to say you are doing a great job, Mr. Mwale. Patrick Bupapi is saying unfunded mandate, libraries not collecting tariffs, library policies, advisory boards, measure impact, staff capacity. I see some of the details for SA libraries not correct. How do you conduct quality assurance? Mr. Mwale, I think we have one question so far to say, how do you conduct quality assurance for the details on the SA Libraries website? So far, I think it is the only hand. It's only the question. I'm not finding hands here. If you can, maybe let me do like this. No, I'm not finding hands, Mr. Mwale. If you can get clarity on the question in the text box, in the chat.
Thank you, Chair. To respond on the question of the data on the portal, the data on the portal, it's updated annually, and it's updated as received from provincial heads for public libraries at Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. All the addresses there of the libraries, they are posted as received. Therefore, provinces, they have an obligation to submit verified statistics, and we keep revising them annually. Therefore, if ever there is a change in terms of contact and address, it will be updated on annual basis. So I'm not sure whether where Mr. Bobape says the information is inaccurate. Perhaps he can send an email and then we can clarify him. But as far as concerned, this is verified statistics. These are the statistics that are collected by the provinces, starting from district, and the belief is that everything there it's of quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mwale. You are a very good teacher, a very good facilitator. You know, when there's no clarification needed or questions on the floor, it means people were listening attentively, and you were very vocal. People heard what you said, and we are only awaiting implementation. Colleagues, the presentation was recorded, and it will be shared as we will be ending the what we call the presentation. But what we are now going to move to, without questions, we are going to move to announcement by our secretary, deputy secretary, Ms. Tsetla Jimina. Ms. Tsetla,
Thank you,
Mr.
Program
Magali
Director.
gave us a very fruitful presentation. So without delays, we can move to announcement, and you give us the items.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director. Colleagues, thank you so much for joining in the meeting. I have important updates to share with you. Please take note that we will soon be having another workshop on cataloging, but then we are still in the process of finalizing details with the facilitator. As soon as every detail is finalized, we will send out the invite to all of you. And then secondly, which is the most important part of it, please, colleagues, let us renew our membership. We have to be members. So let's pay our membership. And thank you for always responding to the call and always supporting the branch. And also, lastly, don't forget that there's a national conference, Yaliasa, that is going to take place from the 9th to the 13th of October. The venue is Cape Town, Lodge Chris Hotel. So yes, thank you so much. And let's put all this announcement in our mind and look out for any update. And please respond to the call when we ask you to be part of our workshops. Thank you so much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Matsatla. Colleagues, it seems we have come to our end of the program with Mr. Lishili saying thank you, Mr. Magali, for whetting our appetite. Much appreciated. Colleagues, we would like to thank each and every one of you who made time to our call and attended this advocacy work group, and mostly thanking our facilitator, Mr. Magali, for making time for us when we made a call to him to say we need this intervention in the province and in LIS sector, to say let us come and conscientize our LIS sector in this regard in terms of advocacy and marketing in libraries. Colleagues, one of the other issues that we can tackle in advocacy is to share our programs that we are doing in our libraries. Please send your stories to us, Liasa Limpopo branch, through our PRO's office, which is being led by myself, so that we are able to share on our socials and newsletters. Last we made a call to say colleagues should assist us in sharing with us what they are doing in their libraries, so that we can issue newsletter on a regular basis. But we are still struggling in that regard. But we are hoping that one day at a time, as we are having Mr. Mrali to support us in terms of advocacy, we will eventually win. Colleagues, my email address, I will just write it here so that when you have stories that you need to share with Liasa Limpopo, you will just do so that we can be able to publish them, and you will have a platform to advertise or to market to our libraries in terms of Liasa Limpopo branch, so that we are all seen to be contributing to the to the profession. Colleagues, without further wasting time, we have reached our end. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will make a call soon, as our Deputy Secretary has mentioned. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see each other soon. Thank you.